Okay, it's 4:30 on the dot. I'm going to wait until I see some friends join in. Let me know when you're here. Make sure I have this where I can see it. Comments, okay. Hope y'all are doing good. So, today we're going to be reading 3 chapters, chapter 6, 7, and 8. And then we only have 2 more chapters, I believe. Let me make sure. There are only 10 chapters. Yes. There's only 10 chapters. So, when you get on here, let me know that you're here so I can see that somebody's joining in. So last night, after I read the 3 chapters, the video was too long. My phone didn't have enough storage. So, if you're reading on YouTube, you'll see that yesterday's chapters were, I had to reread those 3 chapters, which is good. It never hurts, even for teachers, to practice reading a little bit more. So anyway, so yeah, I have chapters 1 and 2, and then 3, 4, and 5, all on YouTube. So if you have somebody, or if you know of somebody who's not on Facebook, make sure and let them know. If they just go to Tiffany Betterton on YouTube, they can see me reading there and read along with me. And if you would like to share this with any of your friends, please feel free to share and let them know that we're reading, and they can read along also. So feel free to share these videos on Facebook, or let them know about the YouTube channel. Alrighty. It doesn't look like anybody is here yet, so I'm just sitting here talking to myself. But I'm going to go ahead and start reading, since I'm going to be doing 3 chapters, and hopefully some of you will join in, and it'll show me when somebody pops in. And if nobody joins, no big thing. I'm just going to have the video there on my Facebook, and then also, like I said, have it on YouTube, so you can read along later. All right. Okay, so chapter 6 is called The Hunt of the Unicorn. There were 7 tapestries in all. Remember, they're in New York City. It's in the blizzard, and they're looking for a unicorn. And so they had been on the subway. They were in a taxi. They found a castle, all kinds of different places. But now they're in a museum, and they found a tapestry that has a unicorn on it. So let's see what happens. There were 7 tapestries in all. Each was almost as high as the wooden ceiling. Jack read aloud from a sign on the wall under the first one. The Hunt of the Unicorn. Tapestries woven in the Netherlands at the end of the 1400s. The first tapestry showed hunters and hounds searching for the unicorn. The second showed the unicorn being found. The other tapestries showed the unicorn trying to escape, leaping from a stream, chased by hounds, then captured and slain by hunters' spears. Oddly, the last tapestry showed the unicorn alive again. He was sitting in a garden of flowers surrounded by a wooden fence. There was a wide blue and gold collar around his neck, and he was chained to a tree. "That's him," Annie said softly. "How can it be him?" said Jack. "He's a picture in a tapestry." "Read Merlin's poem again," said Annie. Jack unbuckled his briefcase and pulled out the parchment scroll. He read aloud, "The very last unicorn is now well hidden by those who have put him under a spell." "The unicorn is hidden in the tapestry," said Annie. "The people who wove it must be the ones who put him under a spell." Said Jack. He read on. 4 centuries, 4 decades. From that afternoon, at the end of November, before the blue moon. Stop, do the math, said Annie. Right, said Jack. He took out his notebook and pencil. Okay, 4 centuries is, do y'all remember what I said? 4 centuries, a century is 100 years. So 4 centuries would be 400. Good. And a decade is 10. And so 4 decades is 40. Add them up. You get 440. Then if you subtract 440 from 1938, you get 1498. It works, said Annie. The sign says the tapestries were woven at the end of the 1400s, and it's the end of November. And Mr. Perkins said there's a blue moon tonight. Oh, man, whispered Jack. He kept reading. He will wake once more and be free to go home if you call out his name, Divine Flower of Rome. Annie looked up at the tapestry. Divine Flower, she called. Nothing happened. Divine Flower of Rome, Jack called. Jack and Annie watched and waited. Nothing changed in the tapestry. It looked exactly the same. Maybe he's not right. Maybe he's not the right unicorn after all, said Jack. Maybe it's just not the right name, said Annie. Read the rest. Jack read more of the poem. You must coax him to stand. Once his name is spoken, his chain will break, and the spell, too, be broken. He is the right unicorn, said Annie. See, there's the chain. She pointed to the chain in the last tapestry. Yeah, but why didn't calling his name work, said Jack. Why didn't he wake up? I don't know, said Annie. What else does the poem say? Jack read on. Then a young girl must love him and show him the way, lest he be trapped forever on public display. If he loses this chance to rise and depart, all magic will fade from his horn and his heart. He is on public display, and I'm the girl, Jack, said Annie. I love him a lot. I'll show him the way. Okay, calm down. First we need to wake him up, said Jack. Voices came from outside. Jack moved to a window. He looked out into the courtyard. 2 people were coming through the cloister, their heads down against the flying snow. One wore a dark cape and the other a tan raincoat. Jack turned back to Annie, a big grin on his face. You were right, they found us. Teddy and Kathleen are here, he said. They'll know how to break the spell. Of course, said Annie, beaming. Quick, let's hide and surprise them for a change. In there, said Jack. He and Annie hurried into a long room off the tapestry room. They heard the door from the cloister open. They felt a rush of cold air. They heard footsteps. Jack and Annie grinned at each other. Jack put his finger to his lips. Then a quick, nervous boy's voice came from the tapestry room. Grinda, they're not here. I see that, Ballard, but look. Is it him, Grinda? Annie grabbed Jack's arm. Balor? Grinda? She whispered. Shh, whispered Jack. Of course 'tis him, said the girl. I told you those Frog Creek brats would lead us to him. Get the rope ready. Aye, said the boy. Jack and Annie carefully peeked around the corner. They saw a girl and boy standing with their backs to them, facing the unicorn in the last tapestry. The boy held a thick black rope. Call out his name, Grinda, said the boy. The girl took a step toward the tapestry. She raised her arms in front of the unicorn. Dianthus, she called. Wind whistled through the open doorway. The flowers in the tapestry swayed as if the wind were blowing them. The scent of roses wafted through the room. The unicorn moved his head. Oh, whispered Annie. Get ready, Balor, to take him back to the master, said the girl. Annie clutched Jack's arm. Who's the master? She whispered. I don't know, whispered Jack, but I don't think he's a good guy. The girl turned back to the tapestry and spoke softly to the unicorn. Come, my lovely Dianthus, stand up now. Come out of that old rug. The unicorn turned his head and looked out at the girl. The look in his blue eyes was ancient yet young, wise yet innocent. He lifted his head as if he were about to stand. The girl nodded to the boy. The boy slowly coiled the black rope into a noose. The girl looked at the unicorn again. "Come to me, Dianthus," she coaxed. "Don't be afraid. I'll love you and I'll show you the way." All right, here's the picture. So it was not the people that they thought it was after all. Wonder what's going to happen. "No, Dianthus," yelled Annie. "Don't go to her." Annie and Jack bolted from their hiding place. Balar and Grinda whirled around in surprise. They both had pale faces and pale, shining eyes. "Leave him alone," Annie yelled at the strange pair. "You don't love him. We love him." At that moment, there was a flash of light, and the unicorn in the tapestry leapt like a deer over the woven fence. Balar and Grinda shrieked and jumped back. Jack covered his head. Then there was silence. Jack looked up. The tapestry on the wall was unchanged. It still showed a unicorn woven from yarn, chained to a tree. But standing on the floor of the museum was the most beautiful creature Jack had ever seen. All right, here's a picture of the unicorn. Can you imagine if you're sitting there looking at a piece of art and all of a sudden it comes to life? How cool would that be? Turn the page. Okay, so chapter 7 is called Dianthus. The unicorn had a broad milk-white chest and graceful neck. A tuft of hair curled under his chin. A long spiraled horn rose from the middle of his forehead. He stood very still and very tall. His whole body seemed to be glowing. Balor and Grinda just stared at him. They both looked frightened, but Annie stepped forward. "Hi, Dianthus," she whispered. She reached out and gently touched the unicorn's white chest. "Feel, Jack. Feel his heart pounding." "Move away," ordered Grinda. The girl stepped between Jack and Annie. "He is ours and he is coming with us." "He's not yours," said Annie. "Who are you anyway?" said Jack. "Where did you come from?" Brenda glared at Jack. "We come from the same magic world he comes from," she said. "He belongs to us, not you, Balar." The boy shoved Annie aside and tried to loop the black rope around the unicorn's neck. But Dianthus reared up and wheeled around, forcing Balar and Grinda out of his way. Dianthus leapt across the tapestry room toward the garden. Jack and Annie followed him. Through the open doorway into the snowy cloister, Balar and Grinda charged after them. They pushed past Jack and Annie to Dianthus. Balar grabbed the unicorn's blue collar. "You are coming with us, stupid, like it or not." "Don't pull on him," yelled Annie, "and don't call him stupid." Dianthus tried to back up. "Let go," screamed Annie. "He doesn't want to go with you." "He has no choice," said Grinda. "As soon as that rope goes around his neck, all three of us will be instantly transported back to the castle of the Dark Wizard." All right, so here's the picture of what is going on. So there they are trying to get the unicorn. "No!" shouted Jack. He charged at Balar and tried to grab the rope from his hand. Balar let go of the unicorn's collar and shoved Jack into the snow. Then he turned back to the unicorn and began to swing the magic rope like a lasso. Dianthus reared up again and kicked his legs. Breath from his nostrils billowed into the icy air. "A rhyme, Jack!" yelled Annie. "A rhyme!" Kneeling in the snow, Jack yanked the book from his briefcase. He frantically turned the pages looking for a rhyme that he hadn't used. "Call a cloud from the sky?" he shouted to Annie. "Anything," she called. "Try it." Jack read the rhyme aloud. "Down from high, out of the sky, Eno fein, ero lie. A thick white fog instantly filled the cloister. The fog was so dense that Jack couldn't even see his own hand. "Balor, where are you?" shrieked Grinda. "Here," the boy yelled. Someone grabbed Jack. He struggled to break free. "Let me go," he shouted. "It's me," whispered Annie. "Come on." Jack stood up, clinging to Annie. They stumbled together through the garden. Feeling their way along the walkway, they came to the door that led to the main hall. "Dianthus, here," Annie whispered. Jack heard the soft crunch of the unicorn's hooves in the frozen snow. "Where did he go?" Balor shouted. Balor shouted. "Find him," yelled Grinda. Jack reached out and felt the unicorn's soft mane. Annie pushed open the door. Then she, Dianthus, and Jack slipped inside the main hall. Jack closed the door before Balor and Grinda could escape the garden. There wasn't a wisp of fog in the main hall. The museum lady was still behind her desk. She stared at Jack and Annie and the glowing unicorn that had just come in from the garden. Her mouth opened and then closed. Dianthus stepped lightly over the wooden floor. Jack and Annie followed him. The museum lady never blinked. As Dianthus walked gracefully past her desk, she reached out and touched him. She gasped and quickly drew back her hand. "Thanks for keeping the museum open today," said Annie, "and thank Mr. Rockefeller for his gifts." The museum lady opened and closed her mouth again, still unable to speak. Jack opened the door that led to the street. Jack and Annie followed Dianthus out of the museum and down the stone steps. The blizzard had gotten much worse. Snow was coming down harder than ever. The wind was wailing. The unicorn shook his head and knelt down. "He wants us to get on his back," said Annie. "Quick, climb on behind me, Annie. Climb on behind me." Annie climbed onto the unicorn's back. Jack climbed on behind her. Dianthus stood up to his full height. Grinda and Balor burst out of the door of the museum. "Stop!" screamed Grinda. Dianthus looked back at them. Then he leapt nimbly over a snowdrift and headed into the darkening storm. I think that's the end of chapter 7. I wonder, what do you think it would be like to ride on a unicorn? If you've ever ridden on a horse, it'd probably be a lot like that, but I bet they've got a lot more magical moves. So how cool would that be? All right, so chapter 8, this is the last chapter for today. And then tomorrow I'll tell you about what time we're going to read tomorrow. Okay, so chapter 8 is called Back to Life. Jack clung to Annie. Dianthus cleared the driveway of the cloisters and began to run with ease down the street. His long strides were so light and graceful, Jack could hardly feel the movement. As the unicorn ran, he held his head high. His long, spiraled horn pierced the raging storm, seeming to calm the winds and snow. Jack realized he could feel his fingers and toes again. His whole body began to feel warm. Dianthus headed down a deserted parkway along the waterfront, past an empty bridge. The bridge's tower and cables formed a silver... Hang on. The bridge's towers and cables formed a silver arc over a wide river. Oh, arc. That says R. Okay, well, they made a mistake. See? Everybody makes a mistake, even the people who wrote this book. Or no, maybe that is a C. I need glasses. Okay. Oh, Miss Betterton, you're getting old. The bridges, towers, and cables formed a silver arc over a wide river. Wide caps swept across the water's surface. As the unicorn trotted past the river, the water became still. Dianthus left the riverside and headed down a city street. The wind whistled between tall buildings, blowing the snow into great drifts. But the unicorn's horn turned the howling wind into a soft breeze. The wild blowing snow became floating, star-shaped flakes, like the snowflakes on Christmas cards. As the unicorn trotted down the street, snowbound taxis and streetcars started moving again. Lights came on in cafes and jazz clubs. Jack heard happy music coming from inside. With a calm, steady trot, the unicorn pranced on through the city. As he moved past old missions, broken-down tenements, and shabby hotels, people peeked out of doorways and windows to see why the sounds of the storms had died away. When they caught sight of Dianthus, with his horn shining in the windless air, they broke into joyful smiles. Church bells started ringing through the white silence. Finally, Dianthus came to a stone wall bordering Central Park. He jumped over the wall and landed knee-deep in a heap of snow. The unicorn leapt effortlessly out of the drift and cantered over a field and down a slope. Slowly the clouds parted and light from the setting sun poured down. "Hot corn!" a peddler shouted, plowing his pushcart through the snow. "Roasted chestnuts!" shouted another. The good smells of the corn and nuts filled the crisp golden air of the park. Let me show you the picture real quick. There's the old taxi cab. There they are on the unicorn. New York City. The unicorn trotted past Belvedere Castle. Bill Perkins stood outside, staring up at the clear blue sky. "Hey, Mr. Perkins, the monster storm's not coming," shouted Annie. The weatherman saw Jack and Annie on the back of the white unicorn. His jaw dropped. Then he smiled and waved. Jack and Annie rode on. When they passed the statue of the winged angel, Jack thought he saw her move her great wings. "Did you see that?" he cried. "Yes," said Annie. When they passed the statue of Balto, Jack heard the sled dog bark. When they rode past the merry-go-round, Jack heard a chorus of neighs and whinnies, accompanied by lively carousel music. Dianthus pranced down a shimmering pathway. He leapt over a stone wall and cantered over another field. The unicorn's horn glistened, and the snowy field reflected gold and copper light. Not until the unicorn came to the tree that held the treehouse did he stop. Annie hugged the unicorn's long, graceful neck. Thank you," she whispered and kissed him. "Yeah, wow," breathed Jack. Annie looked at Jack over her shoulder. "What now?" she asked. "I guess we climb off," said Jack. "But then what?" Annie asked sadly. "Where does he go?" "That's a good question," said Jack. "He comes with us, of course," someone said. Jack and Annie gasped. Balor and Grinda slunk out from behind the tree. Balor carried the black rope. Jack was stunned. How did you get here so fast?" he asked. "We took the A train," said Balor. "'Tis actually a bit faster than riding a unicorn," the boy laughed meanly. "Shut up, Balor," said Grinda. Then she turned to Jack and Annie. "I am glad you had a happy little ride, but you can say goodbye to Dianthus now. We will take him from here." "No, you won't," said Annie. "Stay away from us," said Jack. "Come on, Dianthus, let's go," said Annie. Before Dianthus could move, Grinda rushed forward and grabbed his collar with both hands. The unicorn snorted and shook his head. Grinda clung fiercely to the collar. "Get the rope over his head, Balor," she yelled. "Now!" Balor looped the black rope into a noose again. The unicorn twisted and turned his head. Jack kicked at Balor. "Stop!" he yelled. "Get away from us!" Jack felt stupid just yelling and kicking, but he didn't know what else to do. As Balor and Grinda struggled to get the noose over the unicorn's head, Annie pointed at them. In a loud voice, she shouted, "Fowl of air, appear now here! Aka, 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 mir!" The black rope fell to the snow. Balor and Grinda started to spin around. They spun like two spinning tops. As they spun, they grew smaller and smaller. Jack saw a blur of colors, gray and brown, green and white, a dash of orange, a dash of yellow. The spinning slowly came to a stop. The two scary teenagers were gone. In their places were two small mallard. Do y'all know what it is? What was the last spell? Ducks. They turned them into ducks. And that's the end of chapter 8. All right, so tomorrow, chapter 9, is called It's Them. So, all right, that was so good. All right, so here's the plan for tomorrow. Tomorrow is Friday. I'm going to read probably earlier in the morning. Let's say at about 11 o'clock. Yeah, I think that's going to work. I'm going to read tomorrow at 11 o'clock. If you can, join me on here. It looks like only one person. Hey, the Sieverts are watching. Anyway, if you can, join me tomorrow. I'm going to read chapter 9 and 10 tomorrow morning, on Friday morning at 11 o'clock, 11 a.m. We've been learning about a.m. and p.m., so you should know. It's not going to be at night. It's going to be in the morning. And we'll finish this book tomorrow. Can y'all believe we've already read a whole chapter book in 1 week? The second week of summer. That's awesome. Okay, so just so you know, we're going to finish this book tomorrow. Okay? Then, here is the next book we're going to start on Monday. It is called number 9, Dragon of the Red Dawn. So we just did a girly kind of unicorny book. Now we're going to do the dragon book. And when I showed y'all this before school was over, y'all were all so excited because the boys love the dragons. So, go get this out of the library or check it out or borrow it. It's Magic Treehouse Merlin Missions number 9, Dragon of the Red Dawn. And we will start reading on Monday, probably a couple of chapters at least. Okay. Yep, there's 10 chapters. So we'll finish this book maybe even next week. And that will be 2 chapter books down. That's awesome. I hope y'all are reading some other things as well. And I've enjoyed being able to have y'all on here with me. And I hope you enjoyed the story. I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.